You know, you can get addicted to mediumship, especially when you're in the deepest grief. Like, I need a reading, I need a reading, I need a reading, because the only time that it feels okay is in a reading. You know, the only time that life is like not painful is in a reading, when I'm talking to my person. But if you don't know any more, then that's the thing that is the fix, and that is not the fix. That's the foundation.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited. This is the second interview in my ongoing series of interviewing the beautiful friends who are also my assistants in the Awakened Way team that supports this work that I do. We talked to Miss Bev, and we're taking people in the order in which they came to work for me and with me. And so today is the lovely Miss Lynette Setzkorn. And I know we're going to dive deep into a lot of personal subjects, but that also will help all of you understand better how living the awakened way can change your life, because Lynette is walking the talk. And if anything gets too personal, I don't have to worry about it, because she is the executive producer of this show and will edit it out without allowing me to have a say in it. So before we go any further, bring Lynette on the show. Hi, Lynette.
That's too funny. Yes, I'm quick with the clip. Get that out of there. Hi.
Well, people know you first and foremost for that laugh. You've helped me with the Q&A programs that I do. You sit in the front row at many of my workshops, when for a long time you were a self-proclaimed #1 stalker with our friend Brenda. We'll talk about that. Tell us about that laugh. Have you always had it?
I have not. I have not. And I mean, there have been long periods of my life that were deeply troubled and very painful. And in particular, I remember after maybe 2 years after my husband's death, I was sitting in a gallery reading, and he came through the medium at the time, and he said, "I heard you laugh this week." And I thought, oh my gosh, I did. I laughed like we used to, just for a minute. And he said, and when I heard you, it zinged straight to my heart. And that was just, because that was one of our things. Mike and I, you know, our laughter together was one of our greatest joys. He was hilarious and very subtle. So a lot of times he would just be like straight man, and I'm, you know, cracking up like I do. So to have lost that during the years of his illness and suffering, and then to have come to that again, wow, that means everything. Yeah.
This is one of the key points that we'll be making today, because people who only know you for that great laugh and your enthusiasm and your joy, helping with the monthly connection webinars and all of these things that we do, will think you've always been this joyous person. But there's such a deeper side to you, such a deeper side.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, as you were talking about Mike, the second you mentioned him, my lip twitched. It took my breath away, and he stepped in showing me those cowboy boots. So I'm going to give him permission to throw anything in as we go along.
Okay. That's great.
But let's go back and let people know that your challenging life, and of course it comes and goes for all of us, the challenges is started long before your beloved husband passed. Would you take us back to the part that really defined the first part of your life and your whole life, I'm sure?
Well, I was very fortunate in being born into a wonderful family, very bright people, you know, professionals, good citizens, and also religious. And they took me to a church. And so I know what you're asking me about when you say, where did it start? But I know also that it really started when I got scared. And I got scared at about the age of 5. And that happened in church, because you know you're going to die because they tell you, and you need to be good because then you'll go to heaven. And I was objectively like a really good little girl. My dad used to sing this song about what a what a good little girl I was. But in church I heard, you must love God with all of your heart and all of your might. And I knew that I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel anything for God. And so I would sit in that pew on Sundays and think, how do I muster up some kind of feeling? And I couldn't do it. And so what I knew from that was that I was going to go to hell. And I was really young. And of course, I'd been indoctrinated with what all that was about, what hell would be like, the eternal fires, the tortures, blah, blah, blah. And so I developed a fear that plagued me throughout my life and affected me in so many ways. So
May I ask?
Yeah.
Did you ever discuss that with your dad when you were a little girl, or with your mom?
No, because as wonderful as my family was, we were not really good about, talking about feelings. I would go to my mom if I was afraid and she would comfort me, but I couldn't put that into words because along with that came this really deep sense of unworthiness. And that meant that I was somehow broken or damaged inside. I wasn't like other people. And that's how I felt my whole life, even, from that young age, is that I didn't fit in because I saw people who seemed to be getting it. That is also a lifelong habit of mine, to compare my insides to other people's outsides. And, we don't know what's going on with anybody, with anyone, unless they tell us. But to look around and say, oh, I don't measure up, But, I say these things, and as I'm saying them, I'm thinking, the reality is that all of that has become like the greatest gifts of my life, because it was those things, those early terrors, the losses, everything that's happened in this lifetime has led me to this. And, this is just like pretty magical. So anyway, my mom's my best friend. She started experiencing some depression when I was in the 3rd grade, and we were so close. And so I took it upon myself to fix her. I thought that I had to do that for some reason. Again, sometimes I think we have these templates that are installed because we're going to, like, I had the template of being a caretaker. That's one of my personality things. And so I get this mom who starts to struggle when I'm in the 3rd grade or so. And so I'm going to caretake. Well, that's not a 9-10-year-old's role, but it was what I did. And so again, that led me down the road to a place of just this. I'll keep saying this. When I say this, I mean post 2012 meeting Suzanne Giesemann, the awakened way process and how that's unfolded in my life. So my mom tried to end her life when I was in the 4th grade, and my sister and I were there with her at home, and she collapsed at the table, and somehow my dad came in, and that was a big deal. But my helplessness in the face of her despair was it was really, really hard to deal with. When I was 12, I woke up one morning and heard my father on the phone, and his voice was shaking, and he said, "My wife is gone, and I think she took a gun." And that was like the last beat of my husband's heart. I think, like, there are these pivotal moments in our lives where, like, life was this and now it's this. And hearing my father on the phone that morning, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again, it was like hearing the last beat of Mike's heart. It's like things are this way, and then they will never be that way again. And you cannot get it back. So you just go forward. And she was never found. She's the oldest missing persons case in Oklahoma. We didn't know that she had actually died until my oldest sister happened into Casadega down in Florida, just out on a lark, a Sunday drive. And they walk around this little village, and there's a woman standing on a porch and says, come in. I think I'm supposed to talk to you. And she sits down. She says, I need to center myself. And then she went, oh, there's a woman rushing to get to me. She's rushing to get to me. And she says, I think this is your mom. And my mom's here because I can feel her in the goosebumps on my arms.
Yeah. And you're not afraid of that now, but you were.
My beautiful mother. She was an incredible soul. So then we knew she had died sometime in the 90s, we thought. And I got more information about that later. We still don't know what happened to her. Don't know where she ended up. And that not knowing, and being in a family where we want to be on the bright surface of things and not really go down, it was really hard to talk about this ripping out of our hearts. And so we really didn't. And that led me to some dark methods of coping with that pain. And I won't go into all of that, but I got sober at 25. Yeah. So there's that. That'll tell you something. Anyway, that was the first. She was my first experience of unconditional love, and then my husband was the next. So, yeah. I feel like I've had bookends, you know, I had my mom, I had Mike, and I had my little dog.
And your dog, Boo.
Yes. Boo.
Who has also crossed the veil. So you
Yeah.
have had your share of very, very tragic losses. We'll call them losses at the human level.
Yeah.
So tell us how it is that you have this infectious laugh now.
Well, I did, you know, I was in 12-step programs from 1980. I finally got it in 1982. That was the beginning of a really profound change, because there was not the God, the get you God that I was brought up with, but instead a God of your own understanding, and the methodology to find that connection, you know, to make the connection. And I did. I didn't think it was possible. And the other, you know, the other real gift of 12-step programs is they tell you just to do it anyway. You don't have to feel it, just do it. And then the feeling comes. You know, if I didn't believe in anything and I just persisted in doing the things that I was told to do. And then I had experiences, you know, little adventures in consciousness, nothing like what would come later. But I did the process. I cleaned up the past, you know, I cleared away the wreckage. I did all of those things to see. I know we all come into this world with this light inside. And I think that it gets covered up by fears. It gets covered up by ugly behaviors. It's almost like they're a clouding of our shine. And you can't avoid them in this human life. It's not a judgment. You know, it's just, that's part of this world. If we could come here in our pure state and never interact with another person, then maybe, you know, we wouldn't get cloudy. But the world, the world is full of other people, and we're out there interacting, and things get cloudy. So I got to clear all that up. You know, I got to clear away those things so that I felt more on a level with other people. And I had this connection with something. You know, when Mike and I got together, oh my gosh, for probably 12 or 14 years, until he was really too ill to get out of bed most days, we prayed on our knees every morning to the God of our understanding, not to the God that we were brought up with. His was Baptist, mine was Missouri Synod Lutheran. But we prayed to that power that enlivens everything. So I knew those things. And it's no wonder, because, you know, your spirit guide, William James, had much to do with AA. And Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson, the two co-founders of AA, were mediums and into spiritualism and believed in something so much beyond this world. We were happy. I found happiness and peace. And Mike and I, oh my gosh, we had such joy. It was like a storybook life. And then another one of those, you know, pivotal moments, like life is never the same after. We were in Joplin, Missouri, in a hotel room at a conference, and he said, "I'm really feeling like a pain in my belly." Like he had gotten sober when he developed pancreatitis. He said, "It really feels like that," and he was terrified of pancreatitis because it was so painful, really painful. So we went back to Tulsa, went to the doctors, and that just started a long process. You know, the wonderful thing is that we had a lot of good years in there between 99 and when he died in 2012. But that connection, you know, our connection was spiritual. We laughed together. We loved life. We had so many friends. You know, the night that he got really sick in 2002, there were almost 100 people showed up in the waiting room that night because they knew that Mike was in the hospital. And you know, we had a lovely life. We had a beautiful life together.
So you were pretty traumatized when he passed. I'd love, we're going to move on to the things that helped you heal.
The good stuff.
I want to give people the hope that things do get better from that, but I wanted people to know the depths of the pain that you went through, and you're just touching the surface there. Mm-hmm. But you've had some spiritually transformative experiences. I'd love if you shared, even for those who may have heard it already, that experience you had when you were riding down the road in your convertible, I believe it was, right?
Yeah, that was, I think of that. I mean, I think of, like, my guides are like, what are we going to do about her? What are we going to do? She's stuck. She's stuck. And I was stuck. Mike had a complicated death, and it was unnecessary. at the time. I'm sure he would have died eventually, but hospital errors, some really egregious things happened that led to his death. And I, there was a Nile to say this, and I know we don't want to go into great depths, but I was in the ICU with him one night because he'd been overdosed with insulin and they could not get us, and it affected his breathing eventually. It's just a cascade of events. And there was a nurse in there. There was a doctor who was my stepdaughter's friend who had assured me that should it become necessary to intubate him, he would be there. And then he wasn't. And I'm standing by my husband's bed and I'm watching his oxygen level drop, 70, 60, 50. He's down into the 30s. And he said, I can't hold on. And his eyes went dead. And there is nobody to help us. And we're in the ICU. Yeah. I called the hospital operator myself. And I said, my husband is dying and I need help. She said, but you're in the ICU. Like, I know. And there's no help. So I was just hysterical. I heard the nurse call a code. I heard a door slam. And for 2 hours, I thought he was dead. It took him, I think, 7 attempts to shock him back to life. And
so that's traumatic for you.
Well, it is. And the echo of that goes back to my mom. I couldn't help my mom. I couldn't save my husband. I couldn't help him in that moment. And yeah, so classic recipe for PTSD, classic. And I had it. My nightmares began that night and continued until after his death, which came just a little over a year later. And it was, I was a social worker. I worked with traumatized children. I was a sexual abuse specialist with the state of Oklahoma. I did abuse investigations of really serious injuries and hospitalizations, child deaths, that kind of thing. So I wasn't unfamiliar with difficult circumstances or with the results of trauma, but it didn't make a difference when it came to dealing with my own. So most days, all I could do was cry. I could barely sleep. I was in an absolute rage and really felt like, it's so weird because I feel like I'm still that little good citizen, good person that my parents brought up, but I wanted to kill that doctor. I mean, I literally wanted to kill him. I was so angry, so angry. So desperation, I'm driving around town, Mike's dead, I'm crying, it's a beautiful day, the top's down on our little car, and I'm, as always, crying, reliving it, and I hear this voice on the radio, and it was like something about his tone grabbed me. And I started just listening, and it was this man, his name was Hector Black, and he was on the MOTH radio hour, if you're familiar with NPR. People tell stories. And he was telling the story of his beloved daughter that he had adopted while he was an activist in the civil rights movement in the South, who had lived here in Atlanta and had been robbed and then raped and then murdered by a man here in town. And his daughter was, this lovely person, a teacher. She made wedding dresses as a gift for people. And when he said that he had come to love the man who hurt her, his voice cracked, and I had pulled over by this time because I couldn't control my tears and my just listen. I was riveted. He was my angel. Our angels come to us in so many different ways, and Hector was one of my angels. But what happened is I was listening to him telling the story of coming to love the man who had murdered his daughter, of meeting with him in prison, and hearing his story of his horrific traumatic life and forgiving him. It sounds insane, but it's like the top of my head opened. It just like a lid on a jar, and all this stuff just rose out of me like this swirling dark mistiness that just went up and out. And I'm still listening to this story and I'm still crying, but it's just leaving me. It's just leaving me. And that was it. And I think about how that was orchestrated, that I'm driving across town at that moment. I'm listening to the MOTH. I didn't make an effort to listen to the MOTH. It just came on Saturdays. If I was in the car, I heard it. If I didn't, I didn't. And I heard that story. I heard that man. He was my angel. And I had that experience. And then I was free. That was a spontaneous healing of severe PTSD that happened to me in that car. And I'm so grateful for that. Because that, once you can breathe again, once you can sleep again, you know, and have peace, then you can start to heal. Because I couldn't even begin to that point.
And that was the beginning.
Yeah.
And what year was that?
That was March or April of, I believe it was 2013. And you know what else happened in 2013?
Something else happened in 2013?
Yes. September 23rd of 2013, I first heard the name Suzanne Giesemann.
Okay. How did you hear about it? I want to get to the part where I found out about you, but you go ahead. You go ahead and say how you found out.
1 year to the date of Mike's death, my sister called me and said, Suzanne Giesemann, you've got to look her up. She's this incredible medium, but she was also in the military. And you just got to look her up and watch her video, and you can rent it on Vimeo and blah, blah, blah. So I did. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. What is this? You know? Oh.
Were you afraid of mediums at the time?
I was more afraid of psychics, but yeah, I was pretty petrified. I mean, because still the death thing is with me. The fear of dying is with me. I mean, honestly, after Mike died, I would have given anything to get off this planet. But I was so afraid of it. I couldn't, which I'm glad now. I wasn't glad then.
So to you, mediumship wasn't, oh, you're not supposed to talk to spirits. It's, oh, a medium might tell you you're going to die, and you were afraid of dying.
Yes.
You thought you were going to hell.
Yes, because my dad started going to psychics after my mom left. You know, my brilliant chemist father, total left brain, religious, you know, he started going to psychics to try to find my mom. And people started telling these old wives' tales about how, you know, you got to be careful when you go to a psychic. If you walk into this psychic's lair, they might see something over your face and refuse to read to you. And then you'll know that you're going to die. And that was just, you know, my big fear. I had all that stuff just lodged in my brain. You know, the thing about fear is I think it's almost like when you rough up your skin, then you start attracting all sorts of things to be afraid of. You know, it's like you attract dirt into an open wound. It becomes this thing like a magnet for more fears, and that just builds and snowballs. And oof. So yeah, I found you September 23rd, 2013. Watch that video.
And you just said, well, that's nice, and stop. But
well, no, because I mean, I wanted to believe. I'd read all the books in the 90s, you know, Celestine Prophecy, Embraced by the Light, Neil Donald Walsh's books. I'd read all those things. But underlying everything for me was this debilitating fear of death, because it was debilitating because it kept me from a lot of things, like flying, for one thing. 35 years not getting on an airplane because I'm afraid of dying. And lots more. Just,
well, it also kept you from having knee surgery, which you desperately needed, because when we met, and I don't want to get there yet because there's a part before that, when we met, you had 2 crutches that you permanently use, the kind that go up your wrist, not under your arm, temporary, the kind that you were a crippled lady. And
I was, and you know, people think that's so awful, but here's how I looked at it, because I knew I would not be able to have the surgery because I was so scared. I had to do something to be able to extend my range. So, you know, instead of just sitting in a chair, I had those little arm sticks, and I would just go and do what I wanted to, and it helped with the pain, and it let me go further, because I knew that surgery would not be possible because too scared.
You were afraid. You wanted off the planet, but you were too afraid to get off the planet. I'm so glad you were, because we're thrilled to have you here sharing with everybody and helping so many people. So I came to know of you when somebody sent me an article by an evangelist that was in the paper that talked about mediums and how it was wrong to consult mediums. And I usually don't defend my work, but I put something about it on my Facebook page. Mm-hmm. And there was this reply from somebody using an anonymous name that was so eloquent, so beautifully stated, that I replied to that comment and said, please contact me. And somehow, well, it was clearly you. I don't know how I said, please contact me, because I don't put my phone number on Facebook. How did that come about? And what was your reaction?
I remember seeing that and just being like electrified. I mean, excitement, of course, because like you're this amazing person, but absolute terror because what would that be about? What could you possibly be wanting to contact me about?
I wanted to say, who are you that can express these beautiful thoughts so eloquently? Like I said, I just needed to meet you and just say that was one of the most amazing comments in just a comment on Facebook I've ever read. I see it now as a setup, right? That we were
Yeah,
supposed
oh yeah.
And what's
Yeah,
funny is you and I both remember where we were when we had that initial conversation. I was in the car in a parking lot in Estes Park, Colorado. What about
yeah.
you?
I was at a gas station at 11th and Pittsburgh in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was filling up my gray Honda.
Were, were, were you afraid I wanted to talk to you because I was going to tell you I'm a psychic and you're going to die?
Well, I don't know if you remember that you picked up the phone and I just started babbling. It's like, oh my God, I've been afraid of psychics my whole life. Are you going to tell me I'm going to die? But you know how I do. I get excited and I start running on. But yeah, that was, and I'd said something about, I wish it didn't take so long to have a reading with you. And then you told me on the phone, you said, well, I've looked at my list and I don't see you on it. And the funny thing to me is that, so that's probably early 2014, maybe. And I said, well, I read your little thing on your page about, because of course I wanted a reading, even though I was scared. I read your little thing and it said, if you're not in the deepest, most agonizing grief, please do not request a reading. And, you know, let's help these other people who just can't get out of it. I'm
That
like,
was
oh,
back when I was adding to my waiting list, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm fine because I've watched Messages of Hope. I read the daily SANAYA messages. I had started a practice of reading the back channeled messages of SANAYA, which are on your website. And as podcast manager, I will put a link to that because those are incredible gifts of comfort, pages and pages of wisdom from SANAYA and so much love. So I had been doing all those things and I'm cured, right? I'm fine. But I didn't really have any tools. You know, I was meditating, but I didn't really know. It's like I was starting to believe that I knew there was life after death because I'd had signs from Mike, you know, from the beginning, but I didn't know anything about the bigger picture. And what I didn't understand then, you know, you can get addicted to mediumship, especially when you're in the deepest grief. Like, I need a reading, I need a reading, I need a reading, because the only time that it feels okay is in a reading. You know, the only time that life is like not painful is in a reading when I'm talking to my person. But if you don't know anymore, then that's the thing that is the fix, and that is not the fix. That's the foundation. That is the thing on which we can build this incredible life of being awake and knowing the truth and living in a way that is peaceful and not fearful and just joyful instead of the way it is when you don't know.
And I would just like to invite everybody to get this video and rewind right there and listen to that point over and over again about how mediumship helps, but it's not the be all and end all. It leads to what we're leading into here about how it changes your life, the bigger picture. So we first met in person when? You have all these dates memorized, which kind of blows my mind.
You know, big things happen. Yeah, so we had the conversation sometime in maybe March or April, and you, so funny because she said, well, when you come down to Florida, because I was going to see my sister, we'll get together for coffee. And I thought, we will not. And then what you said, and you have that commander thing going on. So you said, you call me when you get to, or email me or whatever you said. You let me know when you get here. So I have some obedience. And I was at my sister's house and I thought, God, I'd been there like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. I thought, oh my God, I've got to call Suzanne. And I said, okay, I'm here. And you said, oh, I just can't work it in. I can't work in coffee, but I'll see you at the channeling on Sunday. And I have never been so relieved in my life. The idea of going to coffee with you. Oh my God. I told my sister and brother-in-law, I said, you cannot leave me alone with that woman. You must come with us. I cannot go
Why?
see her on my own.
Why?
I don't know. Because, probably the same reason that I would sit in court and testify, and all this, this wisdom would pour out, and this, good stuff, where we just won almost every case that I ever testified in. And I was up in the corner of the courtroom watching
What you mean?
that person down there
Talking out of my mouth is what you're.
Yeah, it's like, who is that? So anyway, I saw you at the channeling, and the funny thing, because I was so convinced of my own healing, this is 2014, you came up and you hugged me, and you went like, oof, so much pain. And it was just under your breath, and it wasn't mean, but you felt what I still had not gotten to. I'd had readings. I was getting better. I was believing the stuff. I'd had like short readings in a gallery in Tulsa. I was believing there was more than this, but I hadn't had an awakening.
And it's so unusual for me to have uttered that out loud when I felt, and to just feel what was under the surface. Even though you were smiling on the outside, I just, it was empathy, it was compassion, so much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know at the time what to tell you, and I didn't know that it had an effect on you.
It didn't hurt me. It didn't hurt me. It was actually like it was kind of gift, because it made me aware that, as much as I was whistling in the dark, pretending like everything was okay, because I knew Mike wasn't dead, or my dad wasn't dead. I counted up the other day, it was like 15 or 16 people that I love have died since the turn of the century, which I guess is quite a long time ago, but it's been a lot. My dearest friends, my beloved husband, my father, just, it goes on. And there's like a surface of pretense that can come with, I'm better, but I'm really not better until, for me, I had to dive deep into it and stop blocking. When you block pain, you also block joy, and you can't live only on the bright side. That's not even what we're here for. We're here for the complexity, for the richness of the experience. Like, chocolate is wonderful, but it's so much better with a little salt on it. People add salt to watermelon, salt and sweet, you get that contrast. That's what gives this life dimension and meaning to me, is the contrast between the good and the bad. And that's even a judgment. And I really, really have been striving the last few years just to eliminate judgment from my vocabulary, even from life, to not look at and assess, but just to see and experience things the way that they are, including my own state of being, whether that's on any given day, happy, joyous, and free, or maybe I'm a little melancholy. Things happen in this life. And what I've learned as a result of going beyond a mediumship reading is that peace can be had in all situations. Even I can be crying and still feel peace and joy on the inside. I can be sad and still know that all is well. And the tools that I have, as a result of being on this path now intensely since 2013, the tools are just like life-saving, sanity-saving, serenity.
Well,
I think the biggest one that I have now, because of the level of awareness that I've achieved, is that at any moment I can step out, and I am the observer. I am the one experiencing Lynette. And
that's the, with the book that's just out, The Awakened Way, the subtitle is Making the Shift to a Divinely Guided Life. So when you're talking about stepping out, that's shifting to the observer.
Right. And to me, I laugh and I say it feels like, dipping into a phone booth like Clark Kent used to turn into Superman, just to get that distance. And I don't mean like, step back from it, but it's actually to dissolve into who I am, who we all are, and to recognize that these are experiences experiences that I signed on for, that I most likely chose to come into this life with these attributes in this package with all of the challenges that have occurred. One of my first mediumship readings was with Sandy Soul Sister, who's our friend, and she brought my mom through in a beautiful way. You know, I was like Sandy's third practice reading ever in her mediumship training. And my mom said, even in the hard times, my soul was rejoicing. And that has become a mantra for me because my mother's hard times were horrific. She's why I became a sexual abuse specialist. It was horrible. And that gave me a mantra to see that it can be this and that. I can be having horrific times and I am still okay. You know, I've really in the last couple of years been focusing on living in the and space. You know, it's this and it's that. I'm a healthy, now 67-year-old woman, and I have some weird thing with my wrist that causes pain. You know, I mean, there's this and that, and it's all to not judge it, because to judge it puts up barriers and causes me more pain ultimately than to accept and say, here's what is, and let this, how can I flow with this? How can I flow with this new reality? How can I flow with this new experience? And to find ways to be at peace. I feel like I don't want to avoid the feeling. I want to avoid the suffering. And the suffering is what comes when I resist.
There's a quote you can pull out right there. I don't want to, I'm writing that down. I don't want to avoid the feeling. I want to avoid the suffering.
Yeah. And when my mom left and I, first I dove into chocolate chip cookies all by myself at night, eating just a bowl full of chocolate chip cookies. And then I dove into pills and I dove into alcohol, and all of it was pushing away, trying not to feel what ultimately you have to feel. You have to feel. There is no way out except to go through. I mean, we have to go through it, and pretending like we can tunnel around or, find we can find distractions. Of course there are distractions,
So what do you tell people when it feels horrible? What's the difference between, I don't want to feel this, but I'm feeling it, versus suffering? Where's that line? And what do you do when you don't want to feel it anymore?
Well, what I do are comfort measures. And for me, comfort is to sit and breathe into that heart space and to be quiet. And then physical comfort measures, a hot bath, a hot shower, something hot to drink, unless it's a really viciously hot day, and then, something cool to drink, and to cuddle up in. I have this wonderful friend who gave me this gorgeous blanket from New Zealand. Thank you, Suzanne.
Because it's so comforting.
Yes, comforting. And this is a world where we need comforts. Maybe it's lighting a candle and listening to some music. There's some beautiful, beautiful tunes that have become like, the soundtrack of my life. What is the name of the one that you used to play before the channelings? The Om Kumari mantra. Mantra. There's another one by Jai Jagdish that I listened to when Boo was dying on my lap, and it talks about, it just says beloved child.
May I share with you, Lynette, that your wisdom, we share all the time. You and I have talks about things like this. And the other night I was deeply grieving with a friend of mine, and it affected me greatly. And I came home and I said to Ty, I just need to veg with a movie. And I just don't usually take the time for movies and TV. And I watched that movie, and then I ended up eating popcorn and then ice cream as I'm watching it. And it felt so good. But I realized the next day that was escapism and that was sedating. And what you just shared there is exactly the kind of thing I was thinking the next day. I took it into meditation. I said to the guides, what do you do instead? And what you shared there was such wisdom there of ways to not sedate and to feel it. Again, everybody rewind right there. Those comfort measures that aren't ultimately harmful and escapist.
Well, and I'm not going to judge those times when I do escape into something that, maybe isn't in my best interest, but at the moment it seems to help me, because the judgment hurts me more than the thing. And I'm not talking about self-destructive stuff like I used to do. My escapism between the ages of 12 and probably 28 or 29 were wildly self-destructive and hurtful to my, not to my soul, because my soul is always fine, but very hurtful to me. But yeah, you know, when I sponsored a lot of women in AA for a lot of years, and in AA they say when all else fails in your life, when all else fails, work with someone else who is still suffering, which is why people in 12-step programs reach out to others. So I can be in a complete, total, chaotic, horrible case. In fact, I think of one night when I was at the regular meeting place and a phone call came in from Central Service, which is a place that would people who needed help would call. And I was really just done. I was like, this is stupid. I'm not going to do this. It's too hard. I don't like life without vodka. I don't like it. But then somebody needed help. And I grabbed another woman and we went out to her house and I sat with her from, it was about 7 o'clock in the evening until 3 the next morning. And we talked and we talked and we talked. And what I was telling her, because she wanted to die, she thought she couldn't quit drinking. What I was telling her was how there's hope and there's joy. And in the process of sharing that with her, I came to believe it again too. So it healed me by helping someone else. And we do that with each other, like in your community on Facebook, which is where I met most of my dear friends right now. People support and love one another. In the monthly, in our weekly radio, whatever it is. What is it, Suzanne? It's a podcast.
This is a podcast, Lynette. You produce.
Yeah, this is a podcast. But on YouTube, the comments from people, you know, as the premieres are rolling, there's just so much love and reaching out. And someone will say, I just can't go on. And 5 other people will chime in and say, how can I help? You know, let me help you. And it's extending a hand. Somehow that fixes me. It's not thinking about me for a minute, which gives me time to re-regulate and sort of, you know, come back to center because I'm not obsessing about how bad I feel. I look at somebody else, how can I help them? And then the other thing that I would tell them is like, you know, we're not going to solve this problem today. Go take a long hot bath. I am a proponent of hot water.
I want to tell you, I need to tell you that repeatedly throughout this time that we've been talking, your mic keeps telling me, you, Lynette, hear his heartbeat. Like you've literally heard it. Why is he saying that?
Well, you know, it's so funny to me that people that you absolutely cannot imagine losing, you can come to wish that they could go. It was that way with my father. It was that way with Mike. And the morning that I knew that he was going, there was no coming back from where he was. I had been praying for his release because I could not imagine my amazing, vibrant, funny, lively husband living the kind of debilitated life that he would have had he lived through that last episode. And I was lying on the bed with my ear pressed to his chest. And I was hearing his heartbeat. And I mean, over the years, you know, when you snuggle up in bed and you just listen, that was such a comfort because Mike he was so steady and calm. And I'm, you know, like this little hop toad. So he was that influence for me always, the stable thing, the force that I counted on. You know, you once told Brenda and me, or is it Brenda and I, you said, I've got your back, girls. Mike once said to me, and I've never forgotten it, in 1992, he said, honey, I have your back always. Nobody'd ever said that to me in that way. So he was that. And then I'd listen to his heart and it was slowing and it was slowing. And it got so slow that I would think, my God, was that it? Was that it? Was that it? The last beat. And then that last beat came and the silence, I still can't put it into words. I've written blog posts about it, trying to describe that thing of where one life ends and another life begins. And I still can't communicate the profound nature of hearing it. And so that his heartbeat to me is like, it's like the rhythm of my life, even now. And there are times when I'm in meditation, I think, I feel it. I don't hear it, you know, audibly, like I feel it. I feel it in my heart.
Now I know why he wanted me to say it. Yeah. because I was just I've been experiencing his heartbeat throughout your show, and he's saying, talk about it, talk about it. He also just drew my attention when you just started talking to a bracelet. I mean, it was the left hand, but you must have some bracelet that's significant with him.
Oh, I have a bracelet of his, yeah. That
all these years I've known you, and I don't know that, but he's
yeah,
just
yeah. He had it's beautiful. We bought it at the Grand Canyon where we had a wonderful time, and it's turquoise and coral inlay and silver, and it's a beautiful.
So he's right here, and he dropped in, took my breath away the second we started, and you know that.
Yeah.
You know it beyond any doubt. Tell people how that's changed your life.
Well, you know, sometimes I talk to other widows who are like every day they get up and have coffee with their husbands, and they make that effort to communicate. But I don't know if it's just
in spirit.
Yeah, with their dead husbands. I know a bunch of widows who still have relationships with dead men. And I don't do that anymore. I started doing it, but I don't do that anymore. But what I know is that he is always here, and he's a part of me, which of course makes sense in the big oneness thing. You know, of course he is, of course. But I feel him with me when I do hard things. I feel him with me when I'm, you know, like reading something and getting something out of it. I feel like him. He leads me to things. He sends me signs. I mean, we just, with Cheryl Page and some of her friends, we had a little widows meeting last Sunday. And I was listening to them and thinking, gosh, I really should do more. But Mike is really okay with what I'm doing now. Mike likes this. You know, he doesn't want me to, well, I'm not going to say that because those relationships are lovely when people want to continue them for 10 or 12 years. It's been 12 years for me, and there's never ever in this world going to be anybody like Mike, and I'm good with that. But knowing he's with me every day is like he was my best friend. He was my soulmate. When I had a reading with you, you said, "Ooh, I don't even talk about this. This doesn't come up." But he's showing me twin flames, and I don't know what I think about that, but I know that there was something incredibly special about what we had. So I go into meditation sometimes. Once he asked me, he said, I want you to experience me as I am now, not in the way that you remember me. And so I sat in meditation. I said, okay, show me. Like, bring it. Oh, Suzanne, it was just, I mean, I dissolved. He was present in that dissolved state of pink light. And I was aware of Mike, I was aware of me, but then I was aware, the real I, the big I. Yeah. And so I'd read Billy Fingers not long before that. And one of the reasons why people throw the afterlife of Billy Fingers across the room is because Billy talks about dissolving into the oneness. And we don't like to think about that. You know, we don't want to lose our sense of self. We certainly don't want to lose our loved ones. But what Mike showed me in that was that there's never any loss. It's all always here. And it's held in this immensity, this boundless immensity of just pure love. And it was incredible. So I felt him that way. I felt him physically as Mike, my husband. He's hugged me. He tapped me on the chest once in meditation, so physically that I raised up my little sleep mask to see who had come into my house as I was meditating. But after the thing with Cheryl, I was, see, this is how my mind runs away with me. I went out the next hour, Suzanne, the hour after that little get together, I got like this cascade of signs and wonders and, you know, music starting to play on my phone. It's like he was showing me, I think that, yeah, we can do that. We can do that, but we're good the way we are. You know, we're good the way we are. And I love it. I love it.
He drew a rainbow just then as you were talking about signs. I know that meaning to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You talk about the difference, and you knew certain things before he passed, but then after getting into living the awakened way, and there's this big difference for you. And what I take from what you're saying is the difference is you've now had the personal experience of making that shift to what? because you can talk about this, but you just gave us several examples of being in meditation and experiencing this expanded state. What is that to you?
It isn't that I live this way all the time, and I don't even believe that we're supposed to. I mean, I don't want to, not that there's any chance of it, but I don't want to get so holy that, I'm just skipping down the primrose path and about to ascend. Because I had that before I came here as Lynette. I already had that. We'll go back to it, every one of us, without fail. But what I used to feel like I was, Lynette experiencing everything in the world, and it's just coming at me, pelted like, and not always, lots of good things too. Butterflies come by, flowers bloom, life can be beautiful and awful at the same time. And I read Jim Carrey a quote that he said, I used to experience the universe from the viewpoint of Jim Carrey. He said, and now I recognize that I am the universe experiencing Jim Carrey. And that's how I feel. It's like the roles have been reversed. Like, even there's nothing I can do now to forget what I know. I know that I am the universe experiencing Lynette, expressing as Lynette, and rejoicing and cherishing and loving this experience of Lynette with all of the flaws, with all of the, I mean, we call them flaws. I don't even want to call them that anymore. Just the contrasts, all of the contrasts. It's the yin and the yang of existence, and it's living in the and space. And some of us are more prone maybe to a melancholy look at life, and some of us are more prone to the sunny path, but we're all going to get some of it all the time, always. It's unavoidable.
I remembered that we recently went to Sedona. I was speaking at a conference and you came along, and we were sharing our beautiful friend Connie's house, thanks to her. And I got up in the morning and there you were, and oh, your energy felt so different to me. You were in a funk because of some animals that had been, some javelinas that had been herded away since the last time we were there, and you were grieving for them. And I saw you and you were so sad, and I wanted to comfort you and say, it's okay, you know how their souls are. And instead I just let you sit in your grief for a while. And I thought it was so beautiful that you felt so deeply for them and you allowed yourself to feel that.
Well, I connected with them because the other time that we were at Connie's a year or so before, I had been out on the path in complete darkness right before the moon was rising up over the mountains. And it was the golf course that is down the way from Connie. And I had found myself in a herd of little javelinas, and just hearing their little hooves on the pavement and in the grass, and their breath, and just being surrounded. And then the moon came up over the mountains, and it was just magical. It was a gift. So I had hoped to go back out there and encounter them, have another encounter with the little pigs. But they'd done damage to the golf course, and so they had been done away with. But I don't know if you remember, you found me in that state, and I was doing a meditation, and what should appear but like an opening, and all those little pig faces, those sweet little, and they were just looking at me. I know it sounds ridiculous, but also anything can be created from the artistic medium of this universe. And if it's a bunch of little pigs looking at me to give me comfort, it's possible. I think they might have materialized that night just for the joy that it brought me. I loved that. And then again, they came to me that weekend. Again, we were doing something and some sort of a guided thing, and there they are again, this little herd. I think they're bound by. I loved them. I fell in love with them that night. I think everything that we love is forever tethered to us in some way, and that's really, really a joy to know. I experienced that in a reading with Sandy once, where she brought through all of the children who had died and the ones that I knew before they died, and one baby in particular that I'd held as she died, and 2 young men who had been murdered, and they all came through, and that was their message. That
your work as a social worker.
Yes, but that was their message, is that where there is love, there is an eternal connection, and it had meaning. And I was reading something about who's that guy you're always quoting that wrote, he was a concentration camp survivor.
Oh,
The Search for Meaning. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I was reading about how, we can have experiences and think that we're under assault and life is not fair and life is awful. or we can have experiences and find some kind of peace with them, or we can have experiences and find some sort of meaning in them. And those are the ones that enrich our lives to the greatest degree. And those are the ones that bring us freedom and peace and allow us maybe to help others, you know, with the bad things or the things that we don't want as humans, even though our souls are like, woohoo, you know, our crazy souls are like, bring it, you know, bring it on. It's finding the meaning in those things, finding the meaning in the losses, finding the meaning in, you know, the experiences that are painful, finding the meaning in the joyful times. How do we turn that to love? How do we turn that to what's good and healing and brings more love to the world? That's it. How do we do that?
Well, you have mentioned, you know, spontaneous, spiritually transformative experience that healed you of this PTSD, but you've also several times mentioned having beautiful adventures in consciousness and healing and amazing experiences in meditation. And you and I both know the value of sitting quietly in the silence regularly. What is your practice of meditation?
Well, my morning practice is, my guys have tried to redirect me from making coffee first, but I just don't. I mean, at one point, it's so funny. I actually spilled my coffee over my journal, which I always keep handy. And that morning, the SANAYA message said something about it and showed coffee spilled on a written page in a notebook. It's like,
No.
but I have free will. I can be disobedient if I want to. Nobody's the boss of me.
I'm really working on not interrupting today, but I have to say right here that Lynette has, she's loves dogs, takes care of dogs so beautifully. And we entrusted you with taking care of our dogs when Ty and I went to Argentina recently. And everybody, she thoroughly ruined my dogs because we have our routine and we get up in the morning and we get going. But Miss Lynette would get up with the dogs, let them out, make her coffee, and then they all went back to bed. While she meditated, and the dogs are like, yes, going back to snuggle. So you get up,
Yeah.
you get coffee, and you go back and meditate.
And I come to my chair, which is what I'm sitting in now, and I light a candle. I might put on some music, or I might not. And I have, you know, some sort of reading that is uplifting. I've been reading Rachel Remen's books lately, and it's so beautiful. And then meditation, and I write. I ask what love wants me to know today, and ask, you know, to be guided. And then I feel like I'm ready to go about my day. And then there are other, you know, other times just for the fun of it, I'll sit and do like a really deep, long meditation, you know, because I'm generally 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But just to maybe go have an adventure, you know, to have an adventure in consciousness. Maybe I'll get to travel someplace and or do things like I have rewritten past experiences as a result of meditations that I had. You know, I saw, because of my mother's history of abuse and mental illness and disappearance, all of that, I had this vision of her as someone to be pitied. And I was shown in a meditation that she was not that. And she wanted me to come to know her as she was then, also as she is now. And I sat with her every morning, and I heard about her life, not just the hard stuff, but the wonderful things, because she was amazing, you know, vivacious, outgoing. Everybody loved her.
That was
Yeah,
her.
in meditation, just feeling her, writing what she wanted me to know. And it gave me something that I had always been sad about missing. You know, young women, they talk about their moms becoming their best friends, but I lost her at 12. So to develop that relationship with her now, to see her as whole, you know, yes, these things. And again, it's that and space. Yes, the abused child, you know, 4 to 18, vicious, violent abuse. The college girl, you know, the one who became depressed when the abuse came out, you know, just the attempted suicide, the disappearance, and also this magical, lovely, brilliant, loving woman who had all these interests and friends, and to know all of that, the whole of it, it balanced it out. It was beautiful, beautiful. It took a month and a half, I think, that I sat with her in the mornings, and whole new experience. Now I don't even think of her as, you know, oh, poor mom, and that was how he always said, oh, poor mom, poor mom, and not poor mom. Yes, things happened. She says, even in the hard times, my soul was rejoicing. She says, it's just a silly little human life. She said that too. I don't say that one very often because that's not something people in pain want to hear. But it is, in the overall scheme of things, it's a life. It's rich, it's experience. We enjoy it. We don't enjoy parts of it. But when we come out of this, we always come to bliss. We always come to safety. We always return to absolute love. And wow, that gives such freedom. We can do whatever we want to because we know that in the end, all is well. And I mean that not in the trivial sense of saying all is well, but I mean, wow, wow.
And
Gosh.
you and I remind each other of that when the other person is going through human stuff. That's why we all have friends and confidants to say, right now my life is crappy. And then the other person reminds you all is well at the deeper level. You mentioned earlier writing something in your blog, and I'd like to start wrapping this up by letting people know about your blog. The name of it is?
And unexpectedmystic.com.
And she's the first one, everybody, to say, oh, it's not that great, and yet in your heart and at the soul level it is, because you were meant to write and you do so beautifully. It's what drew you to me, your beautiful writing. So I am requesting, executive producer, that you put the link to that blog in the description so more people can find it, because these beautiful wisdom that she shared with all of us today, my friends, it comes through so amazingly in her blog. It'll touch your heart and soul, and you'll get more and more of a dose of this beautiful, wise, hard-earned energy. Yeah. You can see the gifts in your pain just today, yet who would want to go through that? And yet look what it's led you to.
Well, and I think part of the way that I experienced, painful things in my life was through this lens of what is wrong with me? How am I broken? Why am I not, why me? Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? And I just recently had an experience with this, this wrist thing that just came up out of the blue. And in the way of metaphysical people, I'm like, okay, what have I done? What energetic thing has gotten a hold of me? How can I, as my friend Raven says, I have wire brushed myself to the bone and I've not gotten to the bottom of why I have pulmonary hypertension. Well, I had wire brushed myself to the bone trying to figure out what was wrong with his wrist. And it's pretty much undiagnosable. They don't know what it is. And I sat with Christine Lang, and she said, well, there's no time and there's no space. Like, yeah. She said, so all of our lifetimes are concurrent. I'm like, yeah. She said, well, you had an overlap of one life into this one. And in the other life, you are like a professional level jouster. It wasn't jousting, it was something similar. And you have so badly damaged that wrist, but you won't quit. You won't quit. Your wrist is agonizing and you will not quit doing what you do because that's who you are. And it just overlapped into this life. And that was an STE for me. Like, if I didn't cause it, oh my gosh, then it's just a thing. And I really want to look at all of life that way. Life is just a thing. If we could stop judging and give ourselves a break with this relentless, comparison and competition and, I'm not good enough, I'm better than, all of that stuff, then we could just keep in that flow and stay in that peaceful state. And we might cry one day, we might laugh another, but we wouldn't be tortured, I think, is the thing. So I tortured myself about the wrist. It wasn't even mine. I mean, yeah, it's mine. Another life where I'm a badass jouster, but anyway, I just think there's so much that we don't know. The ways that we punish ourselves and question ourselves in this lifetime when we don't even know the full story. It's just kind of pointless. So let's don't do it.
More wisdom. I want to tell you that our dear friend Brenda has been here the whole time. And she very clearly said to me, I don't want to talk today. It's her turn. And I don't want to talk about me today. I was on the podcast already. So we will acknowledge lovely Brenda. She's played such a role in our coming together, but she's right. This is your turn. We'll be talking about her more in the future. We always will. But I would love if you would tie a bow around this beautiful program by just telling everybody, what does it mean to you to live the awakened way? What is that? What is that?
It's just freedom. I mean, it's freedom. It's not feeling beset by life and life circumstances, but knowing that, yes, everything is happening on this human level. It is, but this is not all there is. And to act, it's one thing to say that. You know, I used to read about things like this long ago and I didn't understand them. It's one thing to say it, but it's an entirely different thing to really understand it and then directly experience that knowing, that freedom, because it changes everything. And that is, to me, that's like, it's like a river now underlying everything that I do. All of my awareness is, all of my human perceptions and awarenesses are influenced by the fact that I know. I remember once you and I were talking and we were trying to, you know, we're always coming up with analogies to try to put this wordless, formless knowing into some kind of words. And we reached a point where we both just quit talking. Because if you go far enough trying to describe it, there aren't words. There aren't words. There aren't.
Well, you have put it into beautiful words today. It looks like you just had some words. I don't want to cut you off there.
Well, as I was saying that, I thought, oh God, I know people are going to hear that and think, well, I just can't get there. I can't get there.
Yep.
Everyone can get there. Start by admitting that it's true. Say it's true, whether you believe it or not. Continue to say it's true. Read near-death studies. Read Suzanne Giesemann books. Watch videos. Read the SANAYA transcripts. And I'll put all these things in the links below. Just keep doing the deal. And treat it like, is it William James with his one white crow?
Yeah.
If one single person in this world knows that this is true, then it's true for everyone. We aren't separate. We aren't distinct from one another. One person doesn't get the good experience while others are cast out. It's not the Lutherans. It's something entirely different. And just keep doing it, but do it from a place of expectant gratitude and knowing. You know, just I expect things to be shown to me. I expect to know. And if not in this lifetime, it's going to be okay. Because I have my white crow over here. There's a lot of white crows out there. Listen to those white crows and trust, because, you know, at the ultimate level, there's only one of us here. So, you know, white crow one having an experience is the same as you having that experience, maybe not consciously in this lifetime, but I just say keep going, but keep going with a sense of peace and hope and gratitude, and don't quit, don't stop.
Well, Lynette, I can't thank you enough for coming on here. What you remind me of is when we're together sometimes, even just if it's in the morning and you're getting up to get your coffee and go back to meditate, we'll share that good morning hug or the goodbye hug when you leave after watching the dogs or whatever. And we hold it for a long time. It's one of those comfortable hugs. It's one of those hugs that doesn't get to the point where, oh, this is uncomfortable and you want to pull away. We feel that connection, and it's so rare to have that. And I feel like today you have given everybody one of those hugs.
I hope so.
Is she awesome, everybody? So again, rewind, replay, write down the quotes, pull them out, make them into memes. This is hard-earned wisdom, but it's coming from a beautiful soul. Thank you, Lynette. Thank you, everybody. See you back here next time.
Listen, they're all